Joe, it was reported yesterday that ESPN and the college football playoff, excuse me, uh, finalized a deal over the next 6 years worth $7.8 billion in TV revenue for the expanded playoff. Your thoughts on the new deal with ESPN and the college football playoff?
Yeah, the biggest thing that you mentioned earlier is what I take away from all this, that we now have a set number. We have a set period of time that this is locked in for. It's good to know that for a good chunk of time before these games have even been played, we're locked into the 12-team format. I think it allows for us to be a little bit more patient with this and for it to properly commence and play out the way that we can actually determine if this is a successful playoff format. I am hoping that there is no desire to expand this thing further. And then the other side of this too, which is going to be impacted after the fact, is the voting that is going to happen next week regarding the 5 and 7 teams, and then also for the Pac-12 to still be considered a Power 5 conference, and for them to get the $6 million instead of the $1 million that is given to the conferences from the college football playoff. Now that we know where the money is, I think that is where the next wave of all this happening.
All right, so when this went through, you want to know my two thoughts that crossed my mind? Number one, from a financial standpoint, I don't think the sport has been healthier. I just don't think that you can look and see the money that's being, pushed into college athletics from an NIL standpoint, from a booster standpoint, from a TV revenue standpoint. And Joe, this isn't even, we're not even talking about the $55 million that gets pushed into, these schools from regular season TV revenue. It's going to be a free-for-all. Your school is going to pay everything they can and do everything they can to get in the playoff because of the TV revenue money. They're going to want a large chunk of that. I think from a financial standpoint, it's never been healthier. The second thing I thought was, like you mentioned, and I'm not going to spend any time on it, this is more 1A for me, but we do have a set schedule, and there's going to be a vote next week with the college football playoff and the commissioners about going to a 5 and 7 model. Instead of the 6 and 6 model, a 5 and 7 model that would push out the Pac-2. I like that. I don't think the Pac-2 should have an automatic bid. But why do I feel like that when this got approved and finalized yesterday, that this continues to add fuel to the fire on players not making money from TV revenue? The first thing that legitimately went through my mind was, oh man, we're about Joe, we're talking about $7.8 billion, and no players are getting any part of that revenue. That is insane to me.
Well, I mean, you bring up a really good point. Part of me is kind of thinking here if that there is some sort of collective bargaining agreement, there's some sort of unionization. It really doesn't make sense for that relationship to be with the NCAA. It actually makes more sense for that relationship to be with the college football playoff, because that's that money that we're talking about here.
Or to your point, why not do it with the conferences very quickly? Do it with the conferences because they're the ones that are going to receive the money. Have a contract with the conferences, and we'll be over with this. But continue.
This money doesn't go to the NCAA. It is getting dispersed to the college football playoff to pay for its operating costs and then to go to the conferences. That is the whole extent of this. And frankly, the college football playoff should not be operating at a profit. I don't know what their books look like. I'm not going to talk on that because I just don't know how much money they as an entity are bringing in. All of the remaining money should be going to the players, like you're talking about. And I think, as you're saying here, this is going to get brought up. As soon as this starts to really pick up steam, I would argue that if the Big Ten and the SEC, if they come to that conclusion that there needs to be some form of union, that they're going to bring this up and say, look at how much money came into play here. The NCAA is not allowing this. We want to allow this. And I think that it is going to lead to more consistency and easiness with interacting with players if there is a collective bargaining agreement.
And you know what the NCAA is going to say?
What?
We ain't got nothing to do with it.
Which is going to hurt them. It's going to hurt them further.
Well, no, because if you think about it, college football has already succeeded from the national championship part of the NCAA. This $7.8 billion ain't got nothing to do with the NCAA.
Right.
The TV contract monies has nothing to. The NCAA has wiped their hands of all of this. Okay. Now the NCAA does give money to conferences for like March Madness, for college baseball playoff, and so on and so forth. But I disagree where I do think the playoffs should run from being in the black, because look, you're going to have to put together a 12-team playoff, right? And it's going to be your biggest part of your schedule here. It's just, I think we're moving ever so closely, okay, to a place where, look, players are going to get money. Now, let me say this too. Mm-hmm. I do have another worry, though. Now, I know over the next 6 years, we won't have any more playoff expansion, okay, because that's the deal that they've come together with. But let me throw this your way. If it's $7.8 billion, about $1 billion a year, a little bit more than $1 billion a year, why isn't the college football playoff committee or conference commissioners going to try to get more teams in there to make more money? It all comes down to, for me, this has nothing to do. Let me tell you this. The expansion never, ever had anything to do with teams not making the playoff.
No, it had everything to do with money. Yeah,
yes,
I don't disagree to do with that.
Money.
Yeah.
So, Joe, no group of 5 team is going to win a national championship. The 12th team or the 11th team in college football, like, for example, Penn State, LSU, Missouri, this year, none of those teams would have won a national title. All of this just is about money. That's all it's all they care about.
Yeah, I mean, I think most intelligent people are going to be willing to understand that from a fan's perspective, yes, we want more games. We want more competitive play. We do want that opportunity for a lower seed to go on a run and whatnot, all that good stuff. But yeah, the motivation is from these broadcasting companies, particularly ESPN, who now owns the rights, and from the conferences trying to find a new way to make more money. But to tie this into what you're talking about here with the players and them eventually getting a union and all that stuff, back when Northwestern tried to do this originally, they were the first team to like try and get to put together a union. We didn't have any of this. You know, we didn't have this large of a contract. We didn't have this much money on the table. So I think that is the biggest play in all this, is that with all this money on both ends for the conferences and for the teams, it has placed us in a completely different conversation in a completely different world.
Oh, it has, but here comes down to the bottom line. Where do we go from here?
What do you mean?
I mean, Joe, I don't think that they're going to – I think they're going to add arguably 2, maybe 4 more teams. I think we get to a 16-team playoff.
I don't think we're going to go that far. I really don't. You think that they're going to try and expand that far?
Yeah, you know why? Because everybody's going to make so much money, and conference commissioners are going to be like, hey, we got 12 right now. I think we can push and level it off at 16.
That's gluttonous if they're going to do. You know what actually I would argue is going to happen before we get to that? I think that there is going to be individual conference playoffs before we get to 16 teams.
You know why that's not going to happen?
Why?
Because when you have a school like Georgia that makes an extra $70 million from athletics from going into the playoffs and playing and winning a national title, they ain't going to do no. The SEC can't do that because ESPN's not going to offer the SEC that. They're not going to offer them that.
Why wouldn't they?
Because look, TV revenue. Okay, ESPN is going to want the West Coast. They're going to want the Midwest on their platform. They don't get the West Coast in the Midwest on their platforms. They want to be a part of the SEC. They have the contract with the SEC. But from a playoff perspective, they 1,000% want to have Ohio State versus Georgia.
Wait, that's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying that the college football playoff is going to be removed from the equation. I'm saying that because it's going to be so contentious to get into the college football playoff, that there will be individual 4-team playoffs created by the Big Ten, the SEC, and whatnot. Do you understand what I'm saying there?
No,
That there's going to be. We have the college football playoff, and then now we have increased competition. We've got more meaningful games in the conferences. Not
so
just
we have a playoff to get into the playoff.
Yeah, we have four. No, we have four. I'm saying this, and I've heard other people talk about this on other shows. We could realistically have 4 teams compete for the SEC championship, and then depending on the results of those games, determines who goes on to the college football playoff.
No way they do that. There's no way.
Wait, we're talking here about if you want more money, there's more money to be had in expanding the competition for the SEC championship game than just adding a couple of teams in the college football playoff. Like if they're really going to be gluttonous and greedy with the money, that's the next thing that's going to happen. That's the next thing that they're going to do. I don't think that's an insane take. I have heard other people pitch that before on other shows that I've listened to, and I think that it is realistic as you're talking about here with the amount of conferences that are in schools that are trying to get more money.
You ever seen the movie Billy Madison?
Yeah, I have.
Do you remember when Billy Madison talked about the little dog named Rocky and the MC said that might be one of the dumbest things that I've ever hold on.
Clip this.
Hold on. That I've ever heard. We are all now dumber, okay, for having sitting and listening to that. I don't think that you're wrong that they would want to do something like that.
They're going to. Watch in 10 years, we're going to be sitting here talking about conference playoff expansion.
You ever seen the movie Billy Madison?
You just asked me this.
Remember when the guy had the sniper rifle and was shooting Billy Madison's enemies? That's what I'll do if they do a sub playoff for the playoff.
I don't think it's bad. I mean, why is that a bad thing? You remove one less regular season game
because they're already going to play in the regular season. Majority of these teams are already going to play each other in the regular season.
But the same thing could be said right now with a lot of these teams into playing each other in the regular season.
Oh, good Lord.
We get plenty of whatever. I think that is a plausible. That is more plausible to me than it is to say that they're going to go to 16 teams. I think we've expanded too far. We've expanded far enough.
I agree that we
blew past 8 into 12.
Yeah, we would expand too far.
BetOnline remains your top spot for all of your live betting action and contests. NFL, college football, UFC, NHL are all in full swing. BetOnline is your number one source for wagering news, odds, trends, and predictions with both desktop and mobile access at any time. Head to BetOnline today and use promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for 50% off your first deposit. That is a 50% welcome bonus. BetOnline, where the game starts.